Hello and welcome to my presentation on global warming and the global economy. My name is Dan Neides. I am an EMBA student at Washington State University, and this is for our International Business Management class, January 2013. As the temperature rises, decreasing food production can lead to malnutrition rates. Dry regions become drier, the wetter regions become even wetter. There have been unprecedented heat waves in many regions, especially in the tropics. Water supplies become scarce, there's an increase in intensity of tropical storms, and an irreversible loss of biodiversity, including coral reef systems. Failure to act on climate change already costs the world economy 1.6% of global GDP, amounting to about $1.5 trillion in 2012. Rapidly escalating temperatures and carbon-related pollution will double costs to 3.2% of world GDP by 2030. In 2010, carbon dioxide emissions accounted for approximately 77% of greenhouse gas emissions from human activities. And as you can see in the lower right-hand corner, worldwide sources of greenhouse gases include energy supply, transportation, industry, agriculture, forestry, and wastewater. Scientists who are skeptical of greenhouse gases theorize that it's solar magnetic activity deflecting cosmic rays, which are capable of seeding cloud formation on Earth. So if you have an increase in solar magnetic activity, it can actually decrease low-level clouds, which decreases the Earth's reflectivity, causing the planet to warm. The debate will continue beyond this discussion. The increase of temperatures on land doesn't tell the full story, however. That's because the ocean absorbed 80% of the heat. This resulted in the ice caps melting at a rate of 2% per decade since 1978. It also caused sea levels to rise an average of 3.1 millimeters per year between 1993 and 2003. Arctic ice is rapidly disappearing, and the region may have its first completely ice-free summer by 2040. 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature is associated with a 10% productivity loss in farming. For a developing country like Bangladesh, as an example, it means losing about 4 million metric tons of food grain, amounting to about $2.5 billion per year. That's approximately 2% of their GDP. Over the past 18 months, destructive floods have occurred in Pakistan, Australia, Brazil, Japan, the Philippines, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and the United States. In 2011 alone, 178 million people were impacted by floods. Global economic losses in 2011 due to floods and storms totaled $121.6 billion. The immediate impacts of flooding include loss of life, damage to property, destruction of crops, loss of livestock, and deterioration of health conditions due to waterborne diseases. Drought conditions in the United States and Russia have destroyed 45% of the corn and 35% of the soybean crops in the worst harvest since 1988. We are likely facing increased inflation across the world in the coming years, particularly in the emerging economies, where food accounts for a larger proportion of household spending. Warmer temperatures in the water mixing with cooler temperatures in the air gives way to hurricanes like Katrina. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina created $125 billion worth of damage. $66 billion were in insured losses. It caused the GDP of the United States to decline from 3.8% in the third quarter to 1.3% in the fourth quarter of 2005. Estimates that carbon-intensive economies and associated climate changes are responsible for 5 million deaths per year, nearly all of them due to air pollution. Longer summers have led to an increase in the allergy season and increased healthcare costs for asthma and allergy sufferers in the United States alone. In addition, increased air pollution kills 1,000 U.S. residents for every 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature. The impact of global warming has a staggering impact on the world economies. In less than 20 years, for example, China will incur the greatest share of all losses at over $1.5 trillion due to global warming. The U.S. economy will be held back by more than 2% of its GDP, and India over 5% of its GDP. Extreme weather affects agricultural productivity and can raise the price of staple foods such as grains that are important to poor households in developing countries. Producing more energy from renewable sources and using fuels with lower carbon contents are ways to reduce carbon emissions. Improving vehicle fuel efficiency and developing better transportation infrastructure in the United States and developing parts of the world will also help. The way to save our planet and decrease global warming's impact on the world's economy is clear. First, use natural gas as a bridge fuel and assist China and developing countries to switch from coal to gas. Next, we use the excess heat from solar flares to our advantage and capture that energy. We should fund research to ensure that solar power costs continue to decline and incentivize the population to embrace renewable solar power and lower carbon emission energy sources in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and thank you for listening.